Before we begin, please hit that like button, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for being part of the story. I snapped out of my daze, startled by the blinding beam of a police vehicle's headlights. I was shocked, and more than a little terrified, by what the officer had just explained to me, his words still echoing in my head. To understand what led to this moment, we need to go back about 5 years. At that time, I worked as a motorcycle taxi driver in one of the big, bustling cities in Southeast Asia. My ride was a humble, two-wheeled motorcycle with a small seat in the back, where passengers could either sit facing forward or with both legs on one side, as many women preferred. Like many in my line of work, I was part of a small motorcycle taxi group, stationed at a busy street corner near the market, a regular meeting point where locals came every day to find a ride. Most mornings, I started my shift around 6 a.m. and kept going until about 8 p.m. I had been doing this for years, becoming one of the most familiar faces at the station, a veteran in the group. But as I got older, my stamina began to fade, and I avoided working late nights. Recently, though, with expenses creeping higher, I decided to extend my hours into the late night. I figured that with fewer taxis operating, competition would be lower, and my chances of getting good fares might be better. For the first few nights, I worked until 1 in the morning, without incident. But on the fourth night, everything changed. That evening, the streets seemed quieter than usual. 2 younger riders and I picked up passengers until about 11 p.m., then found ourselves sitting in silence at the station. No one came. After more than half an hour of waiting, thinking it was unlikely to find any more passengers, the 2 younger riders decided to call it a night and head home, planning to start fresh in the morning. I, however, wasn't ready to give up. I still had a little hope of finding just a few more fares. I decided to wait a bit longer, telling myself that if no one came, I'd go home too. After saying our goodbyes, they left, leaving me alone at the station. After they left, I got lucky. A passenger appeared, waving. I took him to his destination as usual, then returned to the station to wait a little longer for more passengers. By then, it was around midnight. The once busy streets had grown silent, lit only by the dim glow of the streetlights. The air felt noticeably cooler, but the stillness made me uneasy. I kept glancing around, hoping for a sign of any potential passengers, but there was still no one. That's when my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? On the other end was a soft, almost fragile voice, a woman's.
Hello? I need a ride. Are you nearby? Could you pick me up? I'm at the front of the alley next to the hospital.
This caught me off guard. I didn't recognize her voice, nor did I know who she was or how she had gotten my number. Maybe I had given it to another passenger months ago. It didn't matter. A fare was a fare, and I was glad to finally get one. I'll be right there, ma'am. When I arrived, the front of the alley was completely quiet. The only faint light came from an old hospital, abandoned for years, glowing dimly in the distance. I looked around, trying to spot the woman who had called me. Then I saw her, sitting alone at the bus stop. She was wearing a faded white dress. Her long hair hung down, covering her face. She was so thin and frail that she almost didn't look real. I quickly pulled up and said politely, "Sorry for keeping you waiting. Where would you like to go?" She rose slowly, walked toward me without lifting her head, and climbed onto the back of my motorcycle.
To the cemetery.
Her voice was barely above a whisper. It was an old cemetery about 5 kilometers away, known by everyone in the area. The request startled me, because really, who goes to a cemetery at this hour, in the middle of the night? I asked again, just to be sure. "The cemetery, right?" She didn't elaborate. She only said,
When we get there, you'll see.
I felt extremely uneasy and uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset her. I slowly twisted the throttle and followed the route she directed. It was late at night, and the streets were almost completely deserted. The road stretched ahead, empty, with only the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. On either side, there was nothing but darkness, like the city itself had fallen asleep. The few streetlights we passed flickered weakly, casting broken flashes of light, that made the silence feel even heavier. In that dead silence, I began to sense that something was off. I kept glancing at my side view mirror to check on the woman sitting behind me. Each time I looked, I noticed her appearance changing from when she first got on my motorcycle. Her arms were growing paler and paler, almost white. Her once neat, straight hair was becoming messy and tangled, strands whipping about in the wind as though they had a life of their own. Yet she sat completely still, silent. Not a word, not a sound, not even the faint shift of weight you'd expect from a passenger on a moving motorcycle. Not long into the ride, she suddenly said,
"We're here."
We had stopped right at the entrance to a cemetery. An old, rust-covered iron gate stood there, its hinges sagging, with a weather-worn sign above it, its letters faded by years of sun and rain, barely visible in the dim light. Behind the gate, rows of crooked headstones jutted out from the earth like jagged teeth. At that moment, a wave of anxiety and deep unease swept over me, but I tried my best to hide it and act normal. I turned slightly and asked, "Do you want me to stop here?" The woman slowly turned her head toward me, locking eyes with mine, and in that instant, I realized something was terribly wrong. Her face was deathly pale, almost colorless, like someone who had been dead for days. Her eyes were empty and lifeless, yet somehow seemed to look straight through me. Then she gave me a sorrowful smile and said,
"Thank you for bringing me here. It's time for me to go home."
The words seemed to freeze the air around us. A chilling cold wrapped around me, seeping into my skin. What I saw next shocked me to my core. Her body, which had been sitting on the back of my motorcycle, slowly faded away until it vanished completely before my eyes. The moment she disappeared, a foul stench, like something rotting for days, spread through the air. I was so terrified I couldn't move, feeling as though time had stopped and everything around me had gone dark. I stood frozen, not knowing for how long, until the sound of a police vehicle approaching, its headlights slicing through the darkness and the rumble of its engine, snapped me out of my daze.
"Hey, are you all right?"
One of the officers called out. The voice jolted me back to my senses. Seeing the officers in front of me, I told them everything I had just experienced, but as I spoke, they didn't look surprised in the slightest. When I finished, one officer asked,
"Do you know what happened here before? The woman you picked up at the entrance of the old hospital. You're not the first to bring her here."
"What do you mean?" I felt chills race down my spine. I immediately asked them to explain. The officer said,
"That woman was a patient at the old hospital. She died there. Ever since, she's often been seen in the area, sometimes waving down cars, sometimes sitting at the bus stop. But in every case, anyone who gives her a ride ends up here, at this very cemetery."
Even after calming down, I was still shaking. The officers ended up loading my motorcycle onto their pickup truck and driving me home. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The incident was still fresh in my mind. Then I remembered, this woman had called me earlier, asking me to come pick her up. I could still hear her voice in my head, the time, every detail, even the slight echo, as if she were speaking from a long, empty hallway. I immediately grabbed my phone, opened the call history, and searched for her number. Nothing. There was no record of any call from her, no trace that anyone had called me in the middle of the night. No matter how many times I checked, it simply wasn't there. To this day, the incident remains a mystery, and they say the woman's spirit is still out there, waiting for a motorcycle taxi, a cab driver, or anyone willing to take her back to that cemetery she calls home.